thought leadership, project leadership, innovation leadership, but have no business managing people. But because they're so good, and because companies want to hold them, they do just what you just said. They promote them into leadership roles. Many things can happen, but two things definitely happen. One, they usually fail at some of the basics of leadership. Either...
Hello. Welcome to another Knowledge Bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Kimberly Gerber. Kimberly is the founder of Excelerate, an innovative executive development firm specializing in helping leaders prepare for and succeed in C-level roles. For 30 years, she has helped transform the impact of 1,500 plus leaders across 100 companies, including Verizon, USC, UCLA, Bazaar, and much more. Please help me welcome Kimberly with the power of personal impact.
This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
You're going to be the head of marketing. And so I was like, okay, good. And that was what I was going to school for. So that made sense. So I did that and I worked with that company for 2 years. And then they decided they were going to sell the company. And while I was there marketing, we'd grown the company from a $2 million company to a $6 million company. And a lot of that, if not all of that, was on my marketing capability. So they went to sell the company. One of the buyers they brought in was a private equity group. And they interviewed me as part of the process. And they said, hey, we don't want that business for these reasons, but we want you. We'll give you $300,000 and 15% of a company if you will start this company for us. And I said, well, that sounds like a really sweet deal. And so I'm going to do that. Now, mind you, I'm in grad school and that's all wrapping up. And my dream was to run national advertising and PR for a Fortune 500 company. That's what my passion was. So while this offer seemed cool, it wasn't an absolute yes. And so one of the people that worked with me in the home care business, the accountant, she was older than me by about 10 or 12 years, and they didn't want her. So that was a red flag, one I ignored. And she said, hey, we can do this on a shoestring. Skip that. You'll have 50% of a business and we'll do this together. And I said, oh, that sounds more appealing to me. Plus, she was in my ear all the time. So we started a business, and within 6 months, we grew it to $1 million business. During that process, I really saw what money can do to some people, and she became really weird. And so at that point in time, she was the accountant. She was older. She handled all of the legal stuff. And I learned a really very valuable lesson as a business owner, that you really need to know all of the aspects of business. And she came to me with new contracts and said, I basically reformed the business. Wow. Now you own 15%.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my first entrepreneurial experience. But truly, God works in mysterious ways. And I went to see a lawyer and he's like, you could sue her, but you're going to get nothing. So you may as well start up your own home care agency. But I was like, I never really wanted to start up my own home care agency to begin with. Although that set a foundation for something beautiful that would happen later. I went to a networking meeting and this woman, her name was Sue Dom, we were going around doing introductions and I introduced myself and she stood up from across the room and she said, I have a job for you. I'm a recruiter and I have a job for you. Turns out she did have a job for me. She was a recruiter and she had a job in marketing for a company called Fleetwood Enterprises, which is the company that makes the RVs and the manufactured housing. And from there, I got my first step into my Fortune 500 dream job, which led to Starbucks and led to me being a marketing executive and eventually led to me being recruited to be the COO for a .com company. And that eventually led to me launching Excelerate. And the reason I launched Excelerate was I had really tremendous success running a business and then starting and owning a business really early on in my 20s. It just wasn't the right kind of business for me, but I always knew I'd come back to it. I always knew I could do it from that early experience. My 10 years in corporate at Fleetwood and Starbucks was all in marketing. I had marketing roles. Marketing is a lot of different things. My expertise in marketing is in brand strategy. So I was responsible for setting the brand, helping to find what the consumer messaging would be, doing, the commercials, the radios, the advertising, overseeing all of that, working with the advertising agencies, and also influencing product development in alignment with the brands and all the line extensions and things like that. So what I started to notice probably in my mid to starting to get into my later 20s was, the way we market to consumers for products, great leaders kind of did some of the similar things in their leadership. And I really started to pay attention to that. I created my own personal brand. I was running into myself kind of left and right in the way I was communicating and the way I was interacting with folks. And I found lots of hurdles and challenges. And so I really wanted to focus in on what is my personal brand? And that became something that was a very strategic thing to do and catapulted my career in ways that I couldn't have imagined and wouldn't have imagined. So led me to leapfrog lots of positions and really start to live at my potential. And that process of understanding my brand was so important. And so what I started to do with my teams was I started to create retreats for them where I would teach them personal branding my way. Communication mastery is the first program I created, and I created it in organizations. One of my teams at Starbucks was one of the first teams I kind of took through this program of self-discovery, shifting perspectives, dealing with difficult situations, and having conversations all through the brand that you want. I now actually have a program, it's called Brand Your Brilliance, that really comes out of all of that personal self-discovery work I did in my 20s. And even though I was still working in corporations, I was already building a business. I was building curriculum and content and programming to help people see how awesome they are, because sometimes that's very difficult. We're so close to ourselves. We don't really see our greatness. So what I knew was I knew that one day I would be an entrepreneur again. I knew I'd own my own business because I really love everything that comes with it. But I knew that it wasn't going to be in marketing. And I did have a couple pivot years, but I knew that what I wanted to do was I wanted to work with leaders. Leaders have a massive impact. So I knew I wanted to work with leaders to help them really become the best, most confident they could be, self-aware and confident. Those two things have to go together. That's the passion behind Excelerate.
So amazing. And you talked about personal branding, and you said that was a point in your career when you realized you have the talent, but perhaps maybe flawed in the character aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that, and how did you get on track? Because, and the reason why I want you to answer this
Yeah.
and answer this question, because I think this is very important, because you have some talented people out here in the world. They're very talented, but
Yep.
their character flaws is keeping them from reaching their greatest potential. So let's talk about that.
So, what was happening for me was I was a producer. I got things done at a really high A plus level all the time. And I was a workaholic, there's no doubt about it. But I was passionate about it and the quality of the work and solving problems and getting stuff done. That's what I was known for. And I would get a lot of big, hefty projects. And I didn't know myself and I didn't know my talents. In fact, at this stage in my life, actually thought that I was not very smart. You can't see me, but I'm about 5'2.5". I have red hair, and so way back in the day, I really looked like a young girl in a very male environment. I worked at Fleetwood as just it's a kind of good old boy network, and which has great aspects to it too. But I felt pretty intimidated a lot of the time, and I didn't feel very smart, and I didn't feel very valuable. Only in hindsight can I see how valuable I was at the time. But what that led me to was to constantly be trying to prove myself. Now, in doing that, it was all about getting the job done, and there was zero attention for me to building relationships as a means of getting the job done, and I had no visibility. I couldn't see the impact that I had on people. And so while I saw myself as small and irrelevant, what really I was intimidating, bossy, directive, critical,
Mm,
and that was all quite honestly out of insecurity. So it's interesting when you say let's talk about character, that kind of like digs at me a little bit, because it really wasn't about not caring about other people. It was really about not having any sense of reality about how I was showing up and how I was impacting. All the rewards came from the results. And so I kept driving towards results in the way that I naturally knew how. Like, so I had all of these talents, but they had grown them into Popeye muscles. And I had all of these areas of latent talent or non talent that I just was ignoring. And so at a certain point, I would say when I was about 28, I had a couple of things happen. I had a really bad encounter with a vendor. I think there's always two sides to a pancake. So there's lots going on there. But the reality was the person really, I want to say, hated me because I was critical and dismissive and wasn't at all concerned about the relationship. And while they were not the right vendor for us and I was driving to make a change, and eventually we did make a change, there was definitely a moment where I kind of got pricked in the sense like, ooh, maybe there's a piece of this that I'm not handling right. And that caused me to think. And then there was a couple of other interactions like that, like these situations. And I remember one was very powerful. I had a colleague who was kind of a mentor. He was older, he was a colleague, and I had a conversation with one of my direct reports in the hallway. They had done a great job on something, but I wanted them to do something else with it. I was, in my own mind, telling them, great job, now go do this. And then he came into my office after, we were talking outside of his office. He's like, did you see that car crash? And I was like, oh, is there a car crash in the parking lot? And he's like, no, the one out there in the hall.
Oh man.
And, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the way you just talked to your associate, I'm sure she's devastated. And I was like, what are you talking about? I just gave her a compliment and I gave her some more work to do because that's how we reward people. We give them more work. Doesn't she know how much I value her? And he was like, yeah, no. And it probably took a little bit of guts on his part to confront me with that. But that was one of those, it was a pivotal moment. And I do feel like candor became and is a core fundamental value for me in working with clients because we all need people who will be candid with us. So that was a turning point for me. So, a couple of experiences like that, I realized I do not see myself the way the world sees me. And so I kind of went on a personal journey and I did it through journaling of asking God to show me what people saw. How do people see me? And I just journaled for about a year. And then I was like, ooh, I don't really like that person so much. Like, yeah, I could see this, but not that. And then so I spent about a year wondering what to do about it. And this is going back 20 years or more into I won't tell you how old I am, but I'm into my 20s. I'm in my late 20s here. And there really weren't the kind of personal development resources available today. The ones that were available were kind of sketchy, in my opinion. They felt culty. And so I was like, no, not that. I'm just gonna quite frankly pray and journal. And I did have an opportunity to go to the Center for Creative Leadership, which was transformational because in that process, I got to see all the cool stuff about myself, stuff that I had been also blinded from. So pulling these things together, it was really about a 3-year journey of transformation. How do I show up and what is my impact? How do others see me? What do I do about it? And then you know what that third part, and it was about a year, was do I have the courage to change? And how do I do it? I still have that journal. And it really propelled me to understand. Now, I had already been using the personal branding piece. I'd figured that out early. And I was already using that for my benefit because I have a strong personal presence. I have a great executive presence. I'm assertive in most situations, not all, but most. I present in a certain way. And so, from a personal branding perspective, I was already using that. Is that other piece of really saying, okay, how do I want to use my person to have the best possible impact? And there is this intersection, and success happens in the middle. It's when you are being your best, you're bringing your best talents with care and service to the world and to the people around you. And so, really taking ownership for your personal impact is fundamentally the way to get over that challenge that I had. And as you can see, it was a big challenge. It was very emotional.
You explaining that story, I mean, it shows why you're doing so well with personal branding, because before you're able to teach personal branding, You had to deal with this yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the aspect as a CEO. So how do you spot out exceptional talent in your business?
So there's different kinds of talent that you want to be looking for in your business.
Okay.
I work primarily with VP, C level, those types of folks are the leaders that I'm personally working with. However, within an organization, there's lots of different types of people. And if I'm growing a business, like in my own business, I don't want everyone who's on a CEO trajectory. I have certain things I look for when I'm looking for strong leadership talent. Those things are going to be competence, grit. Can they hang in there? And I think entrepreneurs know about grit. They don't last long if they don't have it. So grit, open mindset, resilience, tenacity, those things that are essential to any leadership within an organization and certainly as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
And then do they have the potential for executive presence? I'm looking for those things in leadership, especially executive leadership. In mid-level leadership, I'm looking for, can they build relationships? Can they influence without authority? So when we're thinking about growing our company, we're going to need leaders. But entrepreneurs, they need to have technicians as well. And not all technicians are going to be leaders, right? So I think that one of the things that's on my mind a lot these days is universally in corporations and in small businesses, how can we value and prioritize the people with technical expertise who might be best to always be in those technically expert roles? As a business owner, I'm looking for what one of my mentors calls the ninjas. So if you have a role to hire for, especially in today's economy, especially in today's environment, it's easy to take whoever will come to work that has the reasonable experience that you feel like you like. But really, we should be looking for ninjas, people
Mm.
who are passionate about the thing that they do and not just going to take a job because they think they can get it. That'll give them a stepping stone into something else. Along my career, I have worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small business owners, and that's one of the biggest, most stressful hiring mistakes they make over and over again is to try and hire cheap and have people who really don't want that role but will take it to get to their next thing. So what I would say is, whether it's accounting, marketing, a technical expert, technology itself, all of those things, go for the ninjas. And if someone's a pink flag, if it's like a maybe, it's a no.
Mm.
Because the most important thing that an entrepreneur can do is hire the best possible team.
This is good, and we have to stay here because there's someone listening saying, Cedric, so we have to dig into this because so many people, so many entrepreneurs, so many managers within companies, we hire technicians, and then we take an amazing technician and we just throw them in a leadership position that they're not even
Yeah.
equipped for.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. You have leaders right now. It's like, what else do I do? Because most of these technicians, if they don't get the promotion, they're going to go find a job elsewhere. It's like, Kimberly, what can we do here to define the ninja and then to make that ninja happy long term?
Something that most companies don't do, big and small, is pay their technical experts, the ninjas, as well as they pay their leaders.
Mm.
It comes down to how we value those people. And this is something that is on my mind, and I definitely don't have it all worked out, but I have a really strong belief. And I have helped many leaders who should be leading technically, thought leadership, project leadership, innovation leadership, but have no business managing people. But
Mm.
because they're so good, and because companies want to hold them, they do just what you just said. They promote them into leadership roles. Many things can happen, but two things definitely happen. One, they usually fail at some of the basics of leadership. Either they're not administratively minded, so they don't get, their paperwork and their all of that stuff in on time, or they're not people. and they don't
Yes.
really want to be people. And so they end up having high turnover teams. So supporting a technical expert in leadership is different than supporting someone who is designed to be a leader. So that those can be problematic. The thing that I really feel we in companies need to do is to start saying, okay, how can I move this person forward without necessarily making them feel like they have to be a leader? What are the ways that I can reward them egoically? We all have egos. We all need to feel like we're having accelerating performance. How can I stretch them and really feel like they're expanding their value to the company without kind of loading them up with people to manage? Because people management is in and of itself its own discipline.
Yes.
You've got these technical experts who are great at their thing, but they actually are not great at leading people. So this is definitely an area, and I think that as people through the last couple of years in particular have really gotten to a place where they only want to do what they want to do, I think what we're going to find is, the gig economy is huge. And so all these people who are technical experts are going to leave and kind of do their own thing, at least for a time, because actually many of them will probably come back to work because they really don't like being business owners. You and I know
Absolutely.
that it
Yeah.
that it sounds
It's not
better,
that
it
simple.
sounds easier than it is.
Right.
you know so they don't actually get away from all the things that they thought they were getting away from, but at least they feel in control. At least they can grow where they want to grow, pick the projects they want to pick. So I think that there's something we need to do, but it does start with valuing the technical experts, the ninjas, in alignment with how we value leaders. Because big companies, small companies, it takes both of those types of people to excel at all levels. One of the things that I do now, it's really helping people through career planning, and it's part of the self-discovery process, helping people identify what their talents are and what they want to do with them. And so I help individuals create career lattices that get them, a career plan with a career lattice that helps them develop in the way that they want to without feeling like they need to go up the trajectory of leadership to the executive levels. Because the truth of the matter is, it's very painful when someone who's a technical performer gets promoted and promoted and promoted, but then can't make the jump, and then they get stalled anyway, and it ends up not feeling very good, and they end up in very stressful personal situations because they're in the wrong place. So I've helped lots of folks lattice across organizations into roles that really fit them. And one of my jobs that I see is I actually help their leaders see them for what they are and create the right roles for them.
I love it.
For folks that are in an entrepreneurial setting, I would say not run their business to a formula that someone else gave them,
Oh, that's a knowledge bomb.
because that is a prescription for stress. I think that we're all designed a little bit differently. And I'll just give a quick story. I have a client worked with me for over 14 years. And part of the reason was early on in her career, lots of stress trying to keep up solid business. But every year for a couple of years, she kept trying to do the same thing over and over again. And she would invest, it would fall apart, start, invest, fall apart. And finally, after I think I would say 3 years of this, I finally looked at her and I was like, your business is growing because you do this thing over here, which is your talent. That's your superpower over here. What if you ignore this, which you think you need to do, and just do a little bit more of that?
Mm.
And by the way, go to the spa, which you want to do, and get your nails done, and spend time at the gym and run your marathons, and don't feel like you need to work 40 hours a week, because if you just do a little more of this, you are such a rainmaker. And today she laughs because now this is like 10 years later, and the business has grown exponentially every year, and she it doesn't feel less than because she takes time off for herself. Sometimes entrepreneurs feel like they have to work their fingers to the bone. And part of that is because they're working systems and processes that they've learned, but in ignorance of their own true talents.
That's a knowledge bomb. That's a knowledge bomb. Listen. Oh my goodness. Kimberly, you talk to this friend and you recognize the superpower,
Hmm.
and she listened and took your advice,
Hmm.
and now she's benefiting from her superpower. So my next question is, how can we discover our superpower?
It's committing to a self-discovery process that doesn't have to take 3 years. I took 3 years because I was foraging in the dark. She took 3 years. She took a minute after me watching for 3 years and saying, wait a minute, actually, I see what's going on here. But we don't have to take 3 years. We could take 3 months. And I'm not trying to sell a program at all, I promise. But in
This
my
is
Brand Your
good. You gave
Brilliance
me knowledge.
program, that there's a self-discovery module that really leads you through, thought exercises and some creative exercises, also some external feedback exercises to really get underneath not only what you're good at, but what's important to you, and then how you can bring those two things together vocationally.
Mm.
And for a lot of people, it's not like, oh my gosh, I need to change my job. In fact, rarely does someone say, holy cow, I'm out of accounting and I'm now going to go be in marketing. Mostly it's this fundamental internal confidence to do it your way. So it is being able to say, okay, I have nothing to prove. I'm enough. I bring value. And this is a powerful lesson that I learned, but it was fundamentally changed my life. That I didn't have anything to prove, but just by bringing my true value, that was way more than enough.
Mm.
People would always want me on their team. And even if I didn't work my fingers to the bone. To this day, I don't work my fingers to the bone. I have a very successful business, but I don't work 40 hours a week. Not always 100% working on the right things at the right time. We're all a work in progress on that. But the reality is I've got good life balance. And it's because I do walk day in and day out knowing that I don't have anything to prove. And I also know I am doing what I was designed to do in the way that I want to do it.
I love it. I love it. This is some. I always say knowledge bomb, but you are dropping some life bombs on us. I mean, things that really change us, in our lives, in our personal life, and that work life business balance makes waking up in the morning a joy
Yeah.
today. I mean, this is really awesome what you're talking about.
Yep.
I want you to for our leaders. What are some growth tips, tools, advice that you can share with the Lead to Greatness community to help us reach our greatest potential?
Sure. One of them is, and it goes back to that note about candor and self awareness. Make sure that you have outside input.
Mm,
We can never see ourselves as we truly are.
mm,
And that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I'm most concerned about the good because most people are holding themselves to an external standard. It's one that was set, in the early childhood or at their work, whatever is the norm or the culture or expected at work. And so we spend a lot of time looking out and we don't spend a lot of time looking in. And
mm,
I also have this hand exercise that I do, and listeners can do it with me now. It's like, take your hand and look at it in front of you, palm up, and then bring that palm right up to your nose and tell me what you can see. Can you see the lines on your hand? No. But if you pull it back out, what can you see? You can see the lines on your hand.
wow.
We are too close to ourselves to see how we truly are and what is of true value. So in the Brand Your Brilliance program, I have exercises for people to actually calculate the value that they're bringing to their company or to their organization. And so they can really see, like, okay, if I really just focus on my talents, the things that I also love to do, they come easier, there's less stress, and I can always bring it with panache. Because that's the thing, and this is so key for people who are running their own business, especially with so many entrepreneurs today. There's a market for what you have. And if you clear away the noise of what everyone else tells you to do, and you really listen to the way you want to do it and what is special about you, you will magnetize the right people to you. And the opportunities will come, and they'll come from places you're not expecting. And it's not magic as much as it is you get to be unique, and people like unique. So it's a very powerful process. And what it requires people to do, though, is to kind of suspend assessment or judgment of themselves or of the process as they go through it. they can't come in with predetermined, I've already decided I'm going to be this and I want to be this and I want to be that, or I want to be good at these things and I don't want to be good at these things. You kind of have to just go through the process, do a retrospective. We have, really great. It's not hard, but you have to stay truly open. And then you're going to find the couple nuggets. And for anyone, we have lots of talents, but there's maybe 3 to 5, maybe 3 is a good number, where you really can bring those things together and become known for those things. And in the process, once that self-discovery process is over, the next thing is, okay, how do you live it? It's my 3rd year. How do you actually externalize it? So, I teach people how to have PR plans, personal PR plans, how to have sound bites, so they can talk about themselves in non-bragging ways, but where people catch on. They're sound bites, right? Marketing, fundamentally goes back to marketing. So that people start to think about them the way they want to be thought about. And it also makes the no's a lot easier to say, like, I don't want to take on this piece of business. I don't want to take on this client, but sometimes we do because we live a little bit in scarcity. But having this process done makes it really easy to say, not for me, I won't satisfy them, or they won't satisfy me. And so it just becomes a very powerful foundation from which to lead your business. And that doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a leader inside an organization.
If someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
So 2 things. If someone wants to check out the work that we do, our website is Excelerate, EXCELERATE.com. And there's lots of information, links to tools and resources, and folks can actually sign up to receive access to a number of resources that we provide free to our clients, but also to other folks who are just interested in how we work and what we do. So that's where they can go. And if someone has a question for me from anything that they heard today, my email is kgerber@iaccelerate.com, and they're welcome to reach out to me there.
Wow. On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, we want to personally thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Well, Cedric, this has been a lot of fun, and you know what? It's good. It's good for me sometimes to go back down memory lane and revisit some of those things. So I want to thank you for that.
And don't forget to subscribe to Lead to Greatness if this is your first time. And if this podcast was helpful to you, leave a big thumbs up. And also, I want you to check out our Marriage Coach podcast, the podcast with my wife and I. If you're on iTunes, please rate this podcast and leave a review and help get the word out. Again, thank you, Lead to Greatness Nation, for joining us on today. Looking forward to seeing you again on next week. Till then, remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace. We out.